delegation this year was given the Dirty Ashtray Award for its brazen use of tobacco industry tactics to dispute and delay throughout COP10. It is a great embarrassment to me, Your Honor. Ganun na nga ginagawa nila, dirty tactics. Sinuportahan pa ng gobyernong to. Sinama pa sila at sinuportahan pa ang ganitong mga pangyayari. Nakakahiya, Mr. President. And sinamahan pa sila, holding hands pa sila ng ating mga government officials to attend this international conference. 30 na ginastusan pa na makarating doon. Congress Representative Rep.Marcoleta and his staff. Wow, ganun ba tayo kayaman? Ganun ba kaimportante sa atin na pagtakpan at tulungan ang tobacco industry na kailangan pang samahan ng 30 government officials? Ang sumasama dapat sa conference na to, health advocates.
Mr. President, I rise on a matter of personal and collective privilege. For the 5th time, the Philippines has received the Dirty Ashtray Award. The reason is we were blocking global tobacco control efforts. When I say we, it is a great embarrassment to me, Your Honor, that the representatives for us, for the Philippines, stood before a global audience of mostly health advocates, and they advocated for the tobacco industry, Mr. President. Global Alliance for Tobacco Control again awarded the notorious Dirty Ashtray to the Philippine delegation on the last day of the 10th session of the Conference of Parties, otherwise known as COP10, to the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, otherwise known as WHO FCTC, held in Panama City from February 5 to 10. The FCTC is a treaty negotiated under the auspices of the World Health Organization, created in response to the tobacco epidemic. The treaty has 168 signatories and 180 parties, including the Philippines. The Philippines ratified the FCTC on February 22, 2005. According to the WHO, the FCTC provides a global response to the global tobacco epidemic. It described the FCTC as an evidence-based treaty that reaffirms all people's right to the highest standard of health. Regular sessions of the COP are held every 2 years. The Philippine delegation this year was given the Dirty Ashtray Award for its brazen use of tobacco industry tactics to dispute and delay throughout COP10. According to the Southeast Asia Tobacco Control Alliance, otherwise known as SIATCA, after almost 3 days of deliberation, parties failed to achieve consensus to establish an expert group to facilitate implementation of FCTC Article 9 and 10 on the regulation and disclosure of the contents and emission of tobacco products, with the Philippines joining a minority of parties blocking consensus. What is Article 9 and Article 10? Article 9 deals with the testing and measuring of the content and emission of tobacco products and their regulation. My dear colleagues, mga kababayan, sino ba may ayaw na itest at sukatin ang laman ng tobacco products? Bakit ayaw? Bakit ayaw ipatest? Ano ba laman nun na ayaw ipaalam sa atin? Bakit naman tayo may delegation na hinaharang ang information na makakasakit sa ating mga kabataan? Hinaharang dahil meron silang nilalagay doon na alam nila nakakasama sa kabataan. Imagine, ganun na nga ginagawa nila, dirty tactics. Sinuportahan pa ng gobyernong to. Sinama pa sila at sinuportahan pa ang ganitong mga pangyayari. Nakakahiya, Mr. President. Now, what is Article 10? Article 10 deals with the disclosure of information on such content and emission to government authorities and the public. Disclosure of information. Ang nais lang naman ipaglaban ng health advocates is kayong mga tobacco product sellers, distributors, tobacco companies. Legal naman ang pagbebenta nyo. Pinayagan naman kayo magbenta sa aming bansa. Pero you must conform to regulation. You must disclose kung ano yung laman ng mga produkto nyo para ma-regulate naman kayo. Dahil kung hindi kayo ma-regulate, paano naman ang mga kabataan? Paano naman din ang may edad na na-addict? Dahil nga may mga laman yan na nakaka-addict at nakakasama sa katawan. Why in the world would we send a delegation that would prevent full disclosure of harmful ingredients in tobacco products, including vapes and e-cigs? Why? because we do not have the political will to fight against these tobacco companies. Nakakahiya. It's bad enough that these tobacco companies are allowed to get away with it, but it is even worse and unacceptable that sinasamahan pa sila. Inimbita pa na sumama dito sa conference na to. Ang sumasama dapat sa conference na to, health advocates. Kung gusto naman ng tobacco companies na fair lang ang turing sa kanila, makapagbenta sila, nakakapagbenta naman sila eh. Regulation lang ang gusto natin. And sinamahan pa sila, holding hands pa sila ng ating mga government officials to attend this international conference. I have no words, Mr. President. It is an embarrassment. According to the reports, the Philippines proposed a compromise option that further muddled the discussion and caused more delays. My God, my Lord, bakit ba kayo pinanganak at nagdala pa kayo ng ganyang tao sa isang health conference na manggugulo lang? With no more time left to continue deliberations, the agenda item was deferred to COP11. Every delay is a win for the tobacco companies. Every delay is on the hands of our government officials who allowed it, who held hands with these people and allowed it and are probably cheering na na-accomplish nila yan. Babalik ko, ano yung na-accomplish nila? Ginulo nila yung mga debates para yung simpleng requirement na ilista nila at isubmit nila yung ingredients na laman ng kanilang produkto, ibibigay nila, hindi nila magawa, nanggulo pa sila, dinelay pa nila, dinamay pa nila yung buong mundo. Nakakahiya, Mr. President. Former Health Secretaries Alexander Padilla and Esperanza Cabral have said that this is alarming and that the Philippine delegation should take this dishonor as a wake-up call. Hindi lang wake-up call, Mr. President. Ikulong na yung mga taong yan. Budget pa tayo ng budget. Our chairman of the Committee on Health is here. Budget pa tayo ng budget. Debate pa tayo ng debate na increase yung budget ng healthcare. But on the other hand, sabay-sabay sumasakay ng eroplano at nag-a-attend ng health conference para guluhin yung health conference na yan at para i-dilute yung mga provisions na makakapagbigay lang naman ng information sa ating lahat. O kaya tuloy maraming naniniwala, nakakabuti sa kanilang vape. Kasi hindi naman binibigyan ng public, hindi pinapaalam sa public kung ano yung laman yan. At ito, harap-harapan na ipaglalaban nila na itago yung information. 11 former health and education officials have urged the Philippine representatives to the COP10 of the WHO FCTC to take a stand against e-cigarettes or vapes amidst an increase in its use among the Filipino youth. Dr. Jaime Galvestan, DOH Secretary 1995, Dr. Carmencita Riodica, 2001 to 2005, Dr. Esperanza Cabral, DSWD Secretary 2005 to 2009, and DOH Secretary 2010, Dr. Pauline Rosel Ubial, DOH Secretary 2016 to 2017, Attorney Alexander Padilla, DOH Undersecretary 2001 to 2009, Dr. Susan Mercado, DOH Undersecretary 1998 to 2001, Dr. Madeline Valeria, DOH Undersecretary 2012 to 2013, and former Education Department officials, Brother Armin Luistro, DepEd Secretary 2010 to 2016, and Attorney Alberto Muyop, DepEd Undersecretary 2010 to 2016. I can only speak also for former Secretary Liling Briones because she had made statements about this in the past when I handled the budget of DepEd budget. The Philippines received its Dirty Ashtray Award at COP4 in 2010. But at least it was redeemed the next year, and they received an Orchid Award at COP5 when it excluded tobacco industry representatives from its delegation. Yun lang, Mr. President. Bakit ka naman magdadala ng delegation ng industriyang nire-regulate doon? Bakit? Dalhin nyo sa trade conference, walang problema. Pero ba't mo dadalhin sa isang health conference tapos magpapadikta ka? Yan ang ginagawa po natin, Mr. President. Nakakahiya. At COP9 in 2021, the Philippines was given 3 Dirty Ashtray Awards. These awards are given to companies and governments seen as peddlers of tobacco industry interests. So the Philippines is a peddler of tobacco industry interests. Nagtaka pa ba tayo? Why would we allow it? Wala tayong ginawa kundi ipaglaban ng ating mga kababayan, ipaglaban ng mga kabataan. But we allow government officials to do this right before our very eyes. Based Based on studies collated by the Inquirer, the vape law that was supposed to curb tobacco smoking among adults and the youth is instead leading to a spike in the use of the so-called alternatives, which experts said were as harmful, if not more harmful than tobacco. In-depth research is showing that the law is insufficient and leading to a failure to adequately deter some tobacco and related products from ending up in the hands of young people. This flaw is fueling a growing trend of smoking and vape addiction among Filipino youth, and it is now coined as the vape-epidemic, or the widespread use of vape. A study published online in the National Library of Medicine summarized some of the warning and worries aired by vape law critics in the past years. The law, the researchers said, not only legitimizes the use of vaping products, but also lowered the age at which these can be accessed. The vape law allowed access to tobacco vapes and e-cigarettes to 18 years old, when we had already passed a law pegging the age at 21. Despite regulations, a separate study by the Institute for Global Tobacco Control at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Health found ongoing sales and advertising of tobacco products near many schools in the Philippines. There is ample evidence showing that tobacco companies employ various strategies to promote their products, aiming to attract the attention of children and young individuals. Renowned Filipino tobacco control advocate and Southeast Asia Tobacco Control Alliance Executive Director Dr. Ulysses Doroteo had described the then vape bill as a retrogressive bill in more ways than one. I will repeat, Mr. President, the vape law, RA 11900, overturned 3 protective measures that this representation fought for in the Sin Tax Law, RA 11487. The jurisdiction to regulate vapes and HTPs was transferred from FDA to DTI. Lowered the minimum age of access from 21 to 18 years old and allowed more flavors instead of limiting it to plain tobacco and plain menthol. Mr. President, may I ask that we show again the slide? Historically, these industries even used doctors, or at least actors that look like doctors, to somehow promote that some cigarettes are healthier than others. This was done, if I'm not mistaken, in the 1950s and in the 1960s. And time and again, Mr. President, I kept on saying that same lang naman ang playbook nila. They will still use, whether it's doctors, meron pang dentista, nagsasalita pa sila sa mga conference na patago, pero nalalaman naman natin, kino-convince ang mga ibang professional na mag-shift sa vape. Hindi dapat nag-shift, dapat wag nang manigarilyo at wag din mag-vape. The tobacco industry is slimy, to say the least. They have a track record of avoiding regulation all over the world. In 2009, we passed the FDA law, which intended to cover all tobacco products and other products that have an effect on health. The industry filed a TRO on FDA. The industry filed the TRO and FDA when FDA issued regulations covering tobaccos. We actually won this case, Mr. President, after some 10 years. The Supreme Court ruled that tobacco products affect health and therefore is under the jurisdiction of FDA. But of course, nag-motion for reconsideration pa ang mga tobacco companies kasi ayaw na ayaw nila magpa-regulate. Hindi ko po kinakampihan ng FDA, marami din pagkukulang ng FDA, but they do have the jurisdiction to regulate. Sila lang ang may ability. Kung gusto natin galingan nila, it's either palitan natin yung head para mas magaling or bigyan natin ng pondo para mas magawa yung trabaho. But you cannot just give this jurisdiction to DTI, which is what we did, Mr. President. Mr. President, we have a public duty to protect public health. The loss of lives is immeasurable. The young people that may not reach their full potential because they die of tobacco and tobacco-related products, which includes vape and e-cigs, is real. We must aim to make better legislation which prepares us for the future, and we must aim to make these people who are passing on fake and downright incorrect information and doing it in public, protecting the tobacco companies, they must be held liable, Mr. President. For the record, these are the COP10 delegation. Senior Deputy Executive Secretary Hubert Guevara from the Office of the President led the largest government delegation at COP10 with more than 30 officials and staff. Wow. malaman ko nga kung ano yung budget na pinadala natin sa WHO because in May, Mr. President, and I was a delegate to the WHO World Health Assembly, not at the expense of the Senate or the government, if I may be clear about it, but I was sponsored by WHO itself to talk about the fight that many of you have joined me with against this tobacco company. So now, may 30 na pumunta doon. 30 na ginastusan pa na makarating doon. Congress Representative Rep.Marcoleta and his staff, representative from the Presidential Legislative Liaison Office, Department of Agriculture, National Tobacco Administration, Department of Trade and Industry, Department of Foreign Affairs, Department of Health, Department of Education, Department of the Interior and Local Government, Food and Drug Administration. In my humble opinion, Mr. President, talagang ang dapat mag-attend yan, Department of Health and Department of Education kasi yan ang nangangalaga ng kalusugan natin and kapakanan ng kabataan natin. Sila okay. Kung may isang dadating from the Office of the President, wala naman ho akong problema. Pero among these people, kasama pa ho dyan ang mga tobacco industry representatives. The Philippines sent the largest government delegation to COP10. Wow! Wow, ganun ba tayo kayaman? Ganun ba kaimportante sa atin na pagtakpan at tulungan ang tobacco industry na kailangan pang samahan ng 30 government officials? Kaya pala magkakasakit na at mamamatay na yung kabataan natin because we don't care. We send our government officials to protect the tobacco industry. Madami pa akong pwedeng sabihin, Mr. President, but I think I've said the most important issues. Sadly, the Philippines has received this Ashtray Award, Dirty Ashtray Award, and 2 years in a row na. Ano to, buong administration? 6 years? Yun na lang ba paghahandaan ko? I would have actually attended, Mr. President, because I wanted to have a voice. But the way it works is the head of delegation is the only one who can speak. And you know very well, Mr. President, they will not make me the head of delegation because I will never support the tobacco industry. So I hope, my dear colleagues, you can continue to support those of us who have been standing firmly to protect our youth against the evils of the tobacco industry. Thank you, Mr. President.
Umani naman ito ng iba't ibang reaksyon mula sa ating mga netizens. Ayon kay Jose Makabayan, bakit hindi nyo na lang ipasara lahat ng pagawaan na tobacco? Napakasimple lang ng problema. Kung nakakasama sa katawan ng tao, dapat nyo lang ipasara yan. Pahayag naman ni Evelina Tanate, are they concerned the healths of our kababayan? Mabibilang na lang ng daliri ang mga naiwang tuwid na congressman. At ito naman ang saloobin mula sa ating kababayan na si Vibet Handrada. Bakit hindi gumawa ng batas na wala ng pabrika na gumagawa ng sigarilyo upang sa gayon wala nang mabili pa? Smoker ako at yan ang nakikita kong paraan na makapagtigil sa paninigarilyo. Mga kababayan, feel free to comment below para maglabas ng saloobin sa balitang ito.